House Republicans pick their guy to stop the pork barrel spending. And for those of you unfamiliar with Hal Rogers and his congressional record, allow his various nicknames to fill in the blanks for you. The Pork King, Prince of Pork, Porker of the Month. Pork. Our third story, so that GOP earmark ban, it may have some wiggle room. Don't worry, the Tea Party freshmen are still determined to change business as usual in Washington as soon as a few guys from K Street give them the go-ahead. Hal Rogers of Kentucky will be the new House Appropriations Chair. The 16-term congressman has requested $500 million worth of earmarks. But that was the old Hal Rogers. The new Hal Rogers tells ABC News no more earmarks. In fact, he'll be the GOP's moratorium enforcer.
You've been known as the Prince of Pork. Have you changed your ways?
Well, sure.
A clear and convincing argument. Conservative blog Red State equally sold, lamenting the GOP's selection of a Chairman Rogers. Did you show up at the polls on November 2nd for nothing? It seems that way. Sure does. Tea Party kingmaker Senator Jim DeMint also expressing his disapproval.
But frankly, the thing that killed the '94 revolution was you got a lot of new people came in, but the guys who'd been there forever took over the chairmanships of committees, and we went downhill from there.
But there is a silver lining for Tea Partiers. Rogers is anti-health care reform, calling it a monstrosity and socialistic. Appropriations can decide to deprive the legislation of funds, perhaps, and Rogers has vowed to do just that. Oops. Earlier this year, Mr. Rogers requested $1.5 million in health clinic grants made possible by the president's health care reform legislation. Think Progress obtaining a letter in which Mr. Rogers writes, with this funding, Frontier Nursing Service will be able to continue operations for the next 3 years and continue to provide critical care in an area in extreme need of access to adequate health care. His request, a kind of Obamacare earmark, was turned down. In the meantime, congressional Republicans are making plans to keep lobbyists where they belong on Capitol Hill. Roll call reporting back in October that the Republican leadership, John Boehner and Eric Cantor, circulated lists of experienced Washington hands that could fill top staff positions of soon-to-be-elected outsiders. Today, the Hill confirming that 9 federally registered lobbyists have accepted offers to become chiefs of staff to freshman members of Congress. They will serve in the offices of such Tea Party favorites as Representative-elect Raul Labrador of Idaho, Senator-elect Mike Lee of Utah, and Senator-elect Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. Time now to call in MSNBC contributor-elect and political reporter for Slate.com, David Weigel. Dave, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
So it turns out the Tea Partiers have a job creation program after all. How does Ron Johnson or any of the others explain these personnel decisions to the base?
Well, so far it kind of reminds me of the James Cameron speech from when he won the Oscar. You know, there's not a whole lot of explaining. There's a lot of strutting and a lot of having it done their way. In the case of guys who are appointing lobbyists as chief of staff, you know, I've been writing about that, but no one really seems to care yet. And are you starting to see some of the contours of how much Tea Partiers really were demanding from these members, how much they're going to pay attention? I think you are. I mean, they're granting a lot of waivers to most of these people. I mean, you're going to talk about some other people who they're not so happy with right now. But I'll point out that these guys have hired experienced hands. You know, Pat Toomey's hiring Judd Gregg's old chief of staff. You know, the incoming guys who are supposed to change Washington aren't changing it much. So far, they're not really complaining about that.
The committee chairmanships, I imagine they are. I mean, appropriations is the headline here, but Tea Party-backed members of Congress all lost out to the establishment picks on energy and commerce, the Republican Study Committee, and the Conference Committee. Is that something that is reverberating in Tea Party land?
It is. They're trying to be nice about it, except in the case of Red State. I mean, Americans' Prosperity was pushing really hard to stop some of these guys from winning these positions, and after they won, they said, well, we're going to work with them. We're going to pressure them from the outside. But these are big losses. I think these are the first really big losses for the Tea Party in this new majority. Now, they've gotten a lot of promises. That wasn't unexpected. But, you know, to lose out to Hal Rogers and Fred Upton, people they campaigned against, that reverberates. You know, Jeff Flake, I was talking to on Tuesday, got a position on the Appropriations Committee, and it was seen widely as just a bone thrown to Tea Partiers because he's anti-earmark, Rogers is going to be pro-earmark. Flake was confident that if he got on the committee, he could do what he wanted in terms of creating a new subcommittee for more oversight, and he's not going to get that.
And About the health care reform application that Mr. Rogers made, and the term I sort of made up there, kind of Obamacare earmark. Could anything be more of a red flag? Anything be more anathema to the Tea Party? I mean, are you surprised there is not a protest outside his office just on that right now?
Well, there's so many more things to protest. I mean, the knock on him before that was that he seemed to have a hobby of steering earmarks to companies that his children worked for. This happened. The reason that Citizens Against Government Waste called him the pork king of the month, the porker of the month, there was some very funny
appellation. Porker of the month, yes.
Porker of the month they used for him was because his daughter was going to benefit from a grant for several organizations to work on saving cheetahs around the world, and that just, I mean, that is just anathema if you're a Tea Partier. That really is everything you worked against. Healthcare, you might believe that these guys are going to come around on that, but they're really worried about his instincts. And again, I'd reiterate, in this case and in the case of energy, these guys have so far thwarted the stuff they really wanted, the big reforms they really wanted. They think it makes it harder for them to attack Obama and the big government spending in general.
Cheetahs, no, and per Tea Party hero Glenn Beck, Cheetos, all right. MSNBC contributor Dave Weigel. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.